Okay, while they're setting up, if we could try and hold this hearing to maybe half an hour, that would be terrific.
I think we could do it very quickly. I think my recollection is the first thing we're going to start talking about is to go through the iterations of the septic design.
Right.
You requested that.
Yeah.
And Bill?
Yeah.
You're on.
I want to start.
Okay, so if you can hold your presentation to maybe 20 minutes, and then that would give us 10 minutes for comments from the board and our consultants. And
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it quick. So we'll have Bill Doyle from Doyle Engineering be presenting more of the site stuff, and we know there was some discussion about the septic system, and I have some smaller drawings that I'd love to just come up and so we can point right to things. And then we have landscape architects and the architects here who will probably split my 20 minutes. I don't see me talking for all that time. So anyway, I think we're all familiar with the neighborhood we're in here. We're on Love Lane. At the bottom of the page, we had gone through a process with 72 Love Lane, been approved and under construction right now. This is the lot right next door, 84 Love Lane. It's actually turning out to play out this very similar site design as 72, because there are very similar site constraints. The width of the lot, the covenants that we have in front of the lot, the soil properties, the slopes, the wetlands to the back, a lot of things very similar from 72 to 84. So the similar lot constraints. Bottom line is we have Love Lane here. We have a driveway that accesses the site, which has already gone through the curb cut process. So that curb cut location is kind of has been cemented by this board. We react to that with the driveway down to the kind of parking court area. Then we have the house similar inside the scale to the house at 72. Grades off to the backyard, wetlands in the back, and we're also in front of the Conservation Commission for that process. We presented to them already, and we'll present them. I think we're on with them on the 19th, pending whatever happens out of these series of hearings. The site generally slopes from Love Lane down gradient on average about 10%. The house attempts to break up this slope and make it more flatter in the front. House becomes kind of for retaining wall for all reality, and then it's a walkout basement to the back. Septic system is out front. In the iteration that you have in the package that's been submitted is one of several iterations that we had worked with. I think Joe and Dave Conway, the consultants, can talk a little bit about that iteration process. We'll certainly have the iterations, some of the iterations here as to how we got the septic system that's in the package. And I can talk about that, and I'd love to be able to come up close and just show you exactly on the plans kind of how the logic we went through. Okay. So with that said, step up, and we can get you these drawings. We may have even sent these to Joe as well.
So the plan on top is the revised landscape plan. Everything else is part of the original submission.
Okay, so the iterations, I don't.
No,
we didn't include them in the package, but we'll get you these so you guys have them. So this is 84 Love Lane here. This is actually the septic system that we're showing in your package. What you see here is these. It's kind of a hybrid septic system in that we need to show, for the regulations, we need to show the reserve area, the space for the reserve area, and the space for the active trenches. So in order to do it, what we worked with Wendy at the Board of Health and Joe and Dave and everyone else.
Actually, really tells the whole story.
Okay, yeah, we can start telling the story.
So that's the fat and short.
So what we started with is the idea that you have to have the reserve areas. You have to be able to show you can do all these things. So one iteration was to show septic system here with the reserve area here. Now, this reserve area could be wooded and could be all planted and would be, it would have a landscape design on it. But we would have a 10-foot offset to the front to the frontage, which, that's 10 feet to the trench, but we'd have to keep out here, so you really end up with like a 5-foot buffer strip, which is really, 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 really tight. So this is kind of the short and fat option. The second option that we went through many options, was to try and make it narrower, make the trenches longer. You're limited by how long you can make the trenches, so what we had here was trenches that go that way and trenches that go that way with a header that would go up the middle, so it allows for the system to be longer and narrower. What it does is it limits the side screening, but gets you, 20, 23 feet in the front. So what we tried to do was morph the two together, get a distance here, have these extra long fingers here be the reserve that could be planted on top of and may or may not ever get used in the future. But what it did was it allowed us to hold this back, 20 or so feet, and it allowed us to hold it over this way so we could increase that buffer. So it was kind of the best of both.
I think, and that's part of the reason I dragged you over here after and said, that's the view. Well, it could be. I mean, you guys might have different opinions, but it was, if that was the whole of it, then you'd say that, right? And then if it was like, no, I don't, that's not so much. Actually, you said, don't hang up with my hand, it's different buffer here. So it's a little bit different. That seems to be like the best compromise. So that this one, in the context of those, kind of show you where it goes.
You couldn't sneak it under the driveway or no? Part of it?
We started impacting grades.
Yeah, what happened
that's
there?
a pickup.
Yeah, that becomes the whole discussion of getting the driveway to slope down. If we
Pick up the house.
it would end up picking up the house. It ends up lifting everything up because you have to have
Couldn't be under the lawn in the back?
no roads, complete water. So it's all wetlands back there. The depth of the groundwater would completely prohibit it.
Yeah, so
The soil. I don't think it was good soils back there either.
it picked up the house
Yeah.
when you put it under the thing, because then you basically ride. I think you almost kind of ride over it.
Yeah, this would have to be at least flat and then dive down to get in. And the idea of trying to keep the driveway flat, we went through that before on 72, and it just plays out with the site to have that. And it is that we were leery about that 9-10% pitch in the driveway, and that's what we end up here. If we put that under there, it would be flat here, and then it would be a straight shot down.
Yeah, more likely.
Yeah, and the house would lift up, essentially, is what it would do. The house would 3 or 4 feet would come up exactly 4 feet.
No.
So that's, and we spent, you guys, just the timeline on that, how much time we spent with Wendy and Bill Murphy and ourselves, and exhaustively looked at how the septic design played out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when we came up with such a hybrid option that satisfied all the rules.
Yeah.
And there was like cranking of it and angles of it and stuff, and those things never really worked out. It really is like looking at those three, you can kind of see what the parameters are.
Okay.
So that's that's the site in a nutshell as far as kind of the nuts and bolts of it go. I'd welcome Jade and/or Kelly to come up and speak to some degree to the landscape, because we always know that's a point, or we can talk about architecture, whichever you guys want to hear first.
Sure, landscape next is fine.
Is that high enough for everyone? Trying to once with it, it'll probably fall down.
So I'm Kelly Conley from Terra Inc. We are landscape architects for this project, and we worked on 72. So the goal here was to use a similar palette to what we did at 72, so that 84 it starts to feel succinct, it feels threaded and woven together. It's utilizing the evergreen screening, which is a mix of the white spruces and the Black Hill spruces to get our height variation of scale and density to provide that proper screening from Love Lane, using some naturalizing trees like Betula, which is the birches, the oaks, and so on to give us some textural interest. And then our understory layer of shrubs, both deciduous and evergreens, again, bring the views down so that there's enough screening and variability. In general, it's very much in keeping with what we've done previously, as I mentioned, to make it feel that it's connected. And then we're using a matrix along the roadway and the perimeters of naturalizing seed mix so that we're getting proper native materials re-establishing within these buffer zones. And then your low impact, low growth fescue, which is a native seed mix, so that the turf materials are also native in nature. Do you have any questions?
Sizes of plants?
Sure. So the serviceberry is a 2 to 2.5 foot, 2 and 2.5 inch caliber. So it's going to be probably in that 10 foot mark. We've got an 18 to 20 foot birch, 2 inch caliber hornbeam, because they're being a native, they grow a little bit slower. So they'll probably be in that sort of 10 foot range as well. 14 to 16 foot spruce. 12 to 14, 8 to 10 foot spruce, and then a 3 to 3.5 inch caliber oak, which will put us in that 14 foot range. So there's enough variability in height so that it doesn't feel just static, but we've got the heights we need for screening.
Okay. Are you doing lighting, or is that going to be the architect? Or?
That's architecture.
Okay.
It's mostly house lighting. I don't think we're showing any.
There's no landscape lighting, it's all house lighting.
Can you sort of identify the screenings on both sides between the adjacent residences?
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. So we have our Weston Trail system here, and so we've utilized existing trees, which are these, in the screen, and then added some more evergreens and understory, so that when you're on the trail, you're having a sense of enclosure, and that you're not looking right into someone's property or vice versa. We've been in discussion with the residents here at 72 Love Lane, which are under construction with their house. And we're going to include some more screening along this property line to help also prevent excessive views into and out of that property adjacency.
So we'll be seeing a new landscaping plan when that's finalized?
Yes, we can absolutely submit that to you.
Well, that would be.
Yep.
Well, part of that landscaping plan, we were just showing landscaping from where down further with the next door neighbors. It's in an area that we weren't showing you, and we've been discussing it with the neighbor, and since it's the same landscape architect, it's going to be more of a show on the map, what they've been discussing.
Yeah, it stems from a request from and discussion from the neighbor. And I should actually also note that there was, and I think the package also shows this. That area between the lots. Another thing we've been discussing that I failed to mention, I apologize, is an idea that we had talked about when we were doing 72, the ability to do the earthworks between the two lots at the same time to minimize and eliminate actually retaining walls. Previously on 72, and we understand that that's still a process that needs to be dealt with, is there's retaining walls that come up the side here, and when we started studying 84, we would have similar retaining walls here, so we'd have retaining walls, a gully, retaining walls. That makes no sense. We always knew it would make no sense. So what we did is we looked at what a grading solution would do in there. It eliminates the walls. It allows us to grade this more evenly, and then allows us to apply some of the screening that Kelly and the neighbor Eric had
Are you
discussed
Eric?
about.
No, I'm Eric. Oh, you're Eric. That's right.
So we do have the idea of these two being more done together to eliminate walls.
Better do it more holistically.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. We kind of knew it from the beginning of 72, and it was a discussion that we had at that point. So now it's been realized.
So, just a question of procedure.
Yeah.
Now we're modifying the
No,
adjacent lot.
What they'll have to do is come in with the new grading plan, and if they're working on a landscaping plan, we'll have to amend their 72 Love Lane decision to reference those changes.
Yeah.
I think if the board had said, you know what, keep these two things separate, we don't want to show this merging,
Right.
they just wouldn't proceed. Now, given sort of, yeah, that makes sense type of consensus, that then they can start working on finalizing that as an amendment.
So we're just pretending that there's nothing happening at that property line. It just, everything just gets chopped right off. And then we're going to then bring in the other site plan for modification.
Yeah. And they're under construction, so we will be able to get, have that happen fairly quickly.
Yeah.
That's good. The documentation is,
Yeah, we'll definitely get the
it's not
documentation.
a
We
big
had that
deal,
discussion with Joe
you know.
when we first, yeah.
not a,
So it might even be something that even basically we could even be, as we're reviewing a draft decision, we might be able to start handling this really what ends up being a minor change on 72 Love Lane.
The change on 72 doesn't have to go back to Concom for any review or anything.
No, I don't think so. I think that's, we're having this discussion with them as well, so
Okay.
we can ask that question with them as well. and
Yeah,
make sure that that's-
okay, because it's getting kind of close to the wetlands.
Yeah, it's within the buffer. My experience being the chairman of my conservation commission, it would fall under as a minor change.
Be like a letter.
A letter?
Yeah, he wouldn't even go to the meeting.
yeah.
Well, we're going to be in front of them for this
Oh, yeah.
anyway, so we'll have a discussion with them. We'll just see how Michelle wants to deal with it. Again, it becomes, I think, just kind of an administrative type thing.
Sure. What is the slope in the back of the lots?
This in here.
3 to 1?
Yeah, I think we're showing it as 3 to 1. 3 to 1, and we do have the kind of the boulder thing going on again with the boulders kind of delineating that line.
So what's the vegetation on the 3 to 1 slopes? Are you proposing grass, or what are you proposing?
What are we doing?
That and that's a turf cover, because it's 3 to 1, we can still safely mow it. And it is a tall fescue, so it's actually supposed to grow a little bit higher, so it doesn't need to be mowed as regularly.
Yeah.
And then as we get up next to the stone wall, we transition back to that native matrix, where we let it just sort of go back into the existing wetland condition.
Good. Architecture?
Sure. I have a question about the...
Oh, sorry.
During the sidewalk, we talked about some additional understory screening between the conservation trail and the driveway, so you wouldn't see the house. And maybe I'm just not reading it right, but it looks like there's a lot of ground cover there, but I don't see rhododendrons or any kind of shrubs.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Yes. So you're speaking in this region here?
Yes, particularly to the right of the driveway, or to the right of the garage, the right
So
of the
right
house.
here?
Yes.
Yes, so in here, because of the proximity of that zone to the house envelope, we specified that there would be a ground cover shrub layer. It wasn't articulated to the finest degree which species, because in some ways this felt it was a little more related to the house and then what the potential owners would want as far as that foundation planting. So there is the acknowledgement that needs to have a proper screening, proper shrub basis, but it was not articulated to the finest species level for that reason. Now, we can most assuredly put in a line of vegetation in the back side of this and allow this to remain more open for client homeowner influence.
Yeah, because right now there's just one row of trees, either existing or proposed, and that's it. And I think you need more. I think you need layers. I think you need something dense and eye level. And I don't know that we should leave that up to the owner.
I'm not sure what the with the agreement with the
Yes, yeah.
trails, what the requirements were as far as that relationship.
they, what they said, I'm sorry. It was going to be really, I don't think as much, except for the fact that they were going to be maintaining that area, and they had the right to go in and cut and maintain as we did. Modification, I'm sorry.
But,
Yep, here it is.
yeah, can look at, I mean, with like a pallet and a quantity. Maybe something like that. Maybe if you want some flexibility, like a pallet, like 3 or 4 different species. That, so that they can lock down a set amount and a set pallet, but then there's.
Sometimes we write the decisions, we don't locate every plant, we
Okay.
just call for a number.
Okay.
And then when it's planting time, you work with Kim, you go out and you put the plants where they're doing the most good.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
That's what he means by a pallet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can absolutely do that.
The definitive quantity and size as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kim should just let us know what that ought to be.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Greg McIntosh from Lincoln Architects. Our firm was the one that designed this building. It was done quite some time ago at this point. The design has changed very little in that amount of time. We're using natural weathered materials along the front elevation, bringing down the front roof lines to dive it down to reduce the scale as great as degree possible, so it had the most minimal street impact we could possibly achieve with that house. We're well below the height limits, set forth, and well within the setbacks. I believe my business partner Dan had actually come before you before and presented this design at one point. It's essentially unchanged from that previous time.
Is this the same one as was proposed for the next lot over?
I believe there was an iteration that did that, yes. And the materials in the palette remain the same. Trying to keep it as organic as possible. So, I mean, this is really something I believe that has been presented to you before. Unfortunately, Dan couldn't be here tonight.
But for a different lot? For the adjacent lot? Is it exactly the same design as was proposed on the?
I believe it is. There might have been moderate modifications to the heights of the basement to get the particular site to work, but beyond that, it's the same design.
One of the things that did happen is at 72, we did run into a higher groundwater than anticipated, and I think it's all in the basement.
Correct.
Reacted to that.
And I think that this house actually sits lower, or appears to sit lower on the site than in the previous iteration.
What is happen to know the difference in the finished floor elevations for the two houses? I mean, how much lower does it sit here?
I think it's 6 inches. I think it's 6 or 12 inches.
Okay. You know what the ridge height is?
The ridge height is at 299. The maximum building height is at 307. 299 feet.
What is the difference between the ridge height and the maximum building height?
The maximum building height.
Oh, you mean
here.
that's the zoning envelope?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And for a point of reference, average grade is 271. As I stated before, there's no elaborate site lighting or anything planned.
What is planned?
Building lighting and highlighting the entrances only.
Do you know what the number of fixtures and total lumens?
No, I do not at the moment.
Because there are lighting diagrams in here.
13,280.
Did somebody submit lighting fixtures?
Yes.
Or not?
Yep.
Yeah, it's over on page 3 letter, it's this one here.
Okay.
So it's 13,000. Are all issues are compliant?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, these are lights that we went through, and this was at 72. These are all the same.
I've heard that before. before then.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So these have frosted glass shades, right? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
That is-
And there's
Correct.
there are pole lamps someplace?
Yes.
Where are they?
There was.
Looks like
I have it right in front now.
Oh, okay, so there is one, there's a driveway one, right?
It shows up in the architecture, I don't know if
No,
it's
it's
a
on the
remnant.
site plan.
I wonder if it's a remnant from the,
It says lamppost.
from one of the 74. Well, I mean, we can talk
I mean-
about it, I don't know that it was supposed to be there, it may just be a carryover.
Why don't you just take it out?
We can have a discussion there.
Yeah, let's just take it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we can take it out.
Okay.
I think that's just a carryover from when it was next door.
These deck step lighting, they point up?
No, those are, that's pointing down.
It's got a little hat on it.
Yeah. It actually reads like it should, like that should be the hat, but this
Yeah,
is
but that's the head.
sort of
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's shining down.
a shell almost.
Okay.
Down.
Probably put it upside down.
13,000 lumens. But what's, okay, so there's a pendant on the front porch.
Yeah, it's under a. Well, that's what that is.
It's under the canopy.
Under the canopy, yeah, that's the only, that's it. And then there's a, looks like a downlight or something over the arch, over that door. Looks like a can light there.
That's actually recessed. The door that you see right here is actually recessed into the building, and so it's exterior, but it's within that envelope, and it is shining down.
Yeah. So it's looks like an LED.
Question, I'm looking at the garage lights. There's two lights in front of two of the doors, but not in front of, I mean, why, I'm just curious why they wouldn't be like between the doors rather than in front of the doors. It looks kind of asymmetrical.
Yeah, no,
Not
that's a good
that
question. That's a good
asymmetrical
question.
back. You see how these are here like
Yeah,
that?
we-
As
when
opposed
we-
to like that and that?
When we did 72, the idea of having wall lights here and here was well, the discussion was, can you have can lights that shoot straight down instead of having lanterns on the side?
Yeah, his question is why.
Why there isn't a
Why
third
they,
there,
why
I'm
they,
not
or
sure.
why they're all set?
Yeah, because you have,
Will be right in
In
front of
between, or
you can
one
have the
over
two
each?
can lights here and here.
I
Those are
believe there might
recessed
be
that they're
brackets.
proposing.
I think there might be brackets between the two doors, so I think the intention was to have them centered over the doors.
Yeah,
You know how when you have a 4-foot overhang, a lot of times they'll have the brackets coming off, and so they would be exactly in between there and there at that point. So I think we'd probably be best suited to have one there, and ask for one there.
Yeah, which I don't think would be, much of a problem. They're not there.
Right. I think that would probably be the most appropriate way to
You've
handle
got
it.
a little bit of margin.
Yeah, that adds
Right.
320.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah.
See the those
So you have four
brackets
posts
coming
on
out there,
that.
those are going to be running.
oh, so there's two ways.
Right, exactly.
It's right next to the trail.
I'll have to check with Dan, but I think the design intends to clearly have it, so
Yeah, I
I
think
might as
it's
well ask you for it right
complete
now.
edition.
You can probably ask.
Touch it while you do.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And we should be below the count. So
Yeah, I don't
Well,
think
take
there's
a
going to be an
post
issue.
lamp
Yeah,
out
take
there,
a-
your goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The one thing we talked about was in the conditions, somehow stipulating the architectural style so we don't wind up with the kind of surprise we had last time. And, I think if we can find the language to do that, that would really be a help, so that the guy's not shocked.
Right.
Did you record the elevation of her, Joe?
No.
I mean, I suppose we couldn't stipulate this exact house because the lot has to be sold, so the owner's gonna want something. I think is that the theory?
I think that's the theory, but I think it's,
Could you make that like an 8.5 by 11 exhibit?
Sure.
That says, use the verbiage to articulate the style as referenced in Exhibit A?
Yeah, it's a shingle style house.
well, it would just suffice if you'd say a shingle style house with, I don't know what type of architecture that is, but.
It's the shingle style, but I can work out the language.
Yeah, I just think 51,000 words. And it's,
But then when you come back for what's a slight change and what's a planning board change, I don't know.
Yeah, well, again, I think maybe Dave's suggestion is helpful. You know, if here's an example, this is the sort of thing we're looking for. Or look at the guy next door. You know, that sort of
A
thing.
similar house, a similar style house.
Yeah.
Shingles, similar massing.
Right. And there's a ridge height stipulated there. I remember we got into the ridge height before. So we're talking about those kinds of limitations, and just so the guy has a heads up that it's not. We're signing off on a sort of an overall package here, and that includes the style of the building.
I mean, if you would like supplemental drawings for that, we could do that. Certainly not a problem.
Guys have any questions? Nope. Nope.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Any questions from the audience at all?
I'm the owner of 72, and I was just here because one of the concerns I had was the screening between the two properties, but I think that that's been adequately addressed tonight.
Oh, good.
So just making sure that we do maintain the privacy between the two properties, and there's some thickly developed plantings in the front for the planning board, but as it goes to the back, that they seem to be lacking. But I think you've addressed it.
Good. Okay. Great. In that case, we ready to close this hearing?
Yeah,
We're going to get some more information on the plantings along the trail.
right, exactly.
We're going to get a modified lighting drawing.
Yep. And
And
then the shared property line, it sounded like there was already work in progress on a revised landscape plan, which would need to be incorporated into the record. My recommendation would be just to keep it open so that we can receive, and if we have to have a little bit of back and forth, not knowing what that looks like, at least if we keep it open, I can be working on the decision that incorporates that, but if we need to require a change, then at least we're able to.
So what date?
Well, now we're going to be meeting the
9th?
The 9th. Yeah, I mean we're jam-packed on the next November meeting, so it ends up being the 9th, and I don't have anything scheduled yet, so we could handle this basically at like 8
So
o'clock.
Beth, we'll see you first thing on the 9th, about 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And we can close the hearing, and we'll have the draft decision language ready, I think, by the 9th, so we can review the decision at the same time.
I think I have to give you the draft easement language and draft modification.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think that can be part of the decision that it has to be recorded.
Right. All right, so your homework assignment is to do that before the
Oh, I have it here for you.
Got it. Oh, we just give it to Joe then.
And there's just one other point I have to ask about, and this has to do with the side, the walkway going into the house. This is, I had talked to George Bates about the site of the sidewalk. Halfway to the front door, and that's the correct word. And because part of it is in the no development zone, whether or not he said he would have no problem putting a modification, including in the modification, having a pathway there as long as it's approved by site plan, instead of having, I'm not articulate, I'm sorry, Al, I'm very tired. You must be
You're not
exhausted.
the only one.
Instead of the sidewalk going straight to the house, it's
Yeah.
just a slight curve
Right.
pathway.
Okay, so George is okay with the curve, and we're okay with the curve.
Yes.
And George wants language in there that says that everybody's okay with the curve, or,
I think
how's that
George's
gonna work?
exact language was, that's fine with him, but this is site plan review.
Oh, okay.
And he has, and if it's okay, it would be put in the site plan review.
Okay,
It also brings up the notion of pervious, walk, pavers and stuff like that, just for the walkway and maybe even for the drive.
well,
Does that make sense?
Oh, they have, the stormwater's under the drive, pretty substantial. Yeah, the walkway isn't that huge, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, and then the materials aren't that great. I mean, put a style hole, porous pavement, porous asphalt.
I sense you're steering me away from this idea. Probably not,
I
but,
think there's just not much gain.
Yeah, it's
by
not much
doing it.
gain.
yeah, I hear that right away. Never mind. I withdraw that comment.
okay. So, we'll put it in the decision that we're okay with the configuration of the sidewalk as it's shown.
I don't know what's shown in the plan.
What's shown here is the curve,
Yeah.
Curve.
and I think that's what shows up in your guys' drawings.
Yeah.
I guess it does.
Yeah. Okay. Good, so we'll continue until the 9th of November. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And apologies again for being so late.
9th of
I
November.
was quite patient.
December.
December.
Oh,
Can you
did I
send
say
me-
November? I'm sorry.
Can you send us the electronic?
Yeah, please. You're allowed, no problem.
Is that a Monday or is it, it's the
It's a Monday.
We'll keep it.
Because it's not considered a story.